With that, it brings me great pleasure today to welcome two people who are not strangers to any of you and are certainly not strangers to those sink or swim moments. Our guests today are world-class entrepreneurs, investors, and stars in ABC's hit Shark Tank. Our first guest escaped from communist Yugoslavia with his family at the age of 10, arriving in Halifax, Nova Scotia, with only a suitcase and $20. The family eventually settled in Toronto, where he grew up working minimum wage jobs, including waiting tables, delivering newspapers, a salesman, and even a collection agent. He's now the founder and CEO of Herjavec Group, a recognized global leader in information security, specializing in managed security services, compliance, incident response, and remediation. His inspiring books, Driven and The Will to Win, were simultaneous top 10 bestsellers, and his motivational advice has inspired millions. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to a fellow Canadian, Robert Herjavec. They're not excited at all. We're going to have to get them. This is great.
It's a Canadian thing.
It's a Canadian thing. We know that. So our second guest is an entrepreneur in every sense of the word. He started his first business by taking out a mortgage on his mother's house, and from the basement founded and grew the global lifestyle brand FUBU to $6 billion in sales. His marketing firm, Shark Branding, connects brands and celebrities for everything from endorsements to product extensions. He's also a best-selling author. Please give a very warm welcome to Daymond John. So we were already chatting backstage. What we know for sure is we're not going to run out of things to talk about. We figured that one out early, but it's true. So maybe just to start things out, I mean, this crowd, they're obviously very excited. Standing ovation, you haven't even started yet.
I love that.
Yeah, you don't even need to say anything. They love you already. This is perfect. So I think a lot of people in the room know you for Shark Tank, and they know they feel like they know you a little bit through that show. But there's a lot more to your business side. We covered a little bit in the intros, but I'd love to just kick off with just a moment telling us, like, what do you do for your other job? You know, you've got this whole other career and this whole other business side that goes beyond Shark Tank. So maybe, Robert, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. So what people don't realize is we only film 17 days out of the entire year. We're one of the highest bought shows on network television. I think it's about 32 episodes. 32, yep. Something like that. And we only film 17 days. To give you an idea, the average network show is 12 episodes, and it films for 3 months. So it gives us a lot of time to do other stuff. And, you know, we're all really busy, but my core business is cybersecurity. And I've been in that business for about 30 years. My current business I started 12 years ago with 1 employee, and we did $400,000 in sales. And this year we'll do about $160 million. And so we've gone through everything everybody in this room is going through. Our first accounting system, our first payroll, our first employee, our first bad quarter, our second bad quarter, our really good quarter, all those things. But I do that 23 hours a day. The TV stuff is really fun for me to do.
Great, thank you. What about you, Daymond?
Yeah, so, you know, I spend a little more time on the TV stuff, not the television stuff itself, but actually, you know, going through the deals. And I'll tell you why. We all have teams, and I think every year we hire another 2 people to our team to handle and vet the deals. The deals can take anywhere from 3 months to 6 months to close. But my traditional business of garments and distribution and manufacturing has shifted. Retail is not as strong in this way, or it needs support. So I go through those businesses to get a hands-on experience of how these new up-and-coming companies are converting their sales, how they're finding customers, how they're creating followings. So that's what I really do. And then I apply to the 3 or 4 silos that I have. I have my traditional manufacturing and production of companies, my companies Itani, Kuji, Fubu, and various other companies. Then I am now opening up something like a co-share space where I have all these companies now have spaces in our buildings, and now I get first looks at other companies. And then I have my other brands that I create for celebrities, for Catherine Zeta-Jones, for the Bella Twins, for Mel B, and people like that. So I have 3 different silos to my business.
A few things on the go.
Wow, that sounds so cool. I just have one job. I don't work with Catherine Zeta-Jones and do cool things like you.
That's true.
I'm so jealous.
But you are Canadian.
I am Canadian.
Shout out to Canada.
So, all right, moving on to the first question. That wasn't even the first question, but anyways, moving on. So, Daymond, let's start with you. I think it's interesting, over the last couple of days, we've talked a lot in various sessions and keynotes, and we talked with Richard Branson as well about how your upbringing contributes to your career path and how it gets you to where you are. I understand that you started as an entrepreneur at a very early age of 6, which is, a little earlier than most people, and you were doing that to help support your family, which is extremely admirable. How do you think your upbringing had an impact on you and the success that you've experienced today?
Well, I started off at 6, but that was just selling pencils in school.
That's fine. That's an entrepreneur.
That wasn't to help my family. That was just to get me extra gummy bears or something at lunch. But right around 10 or 11, actually, my parents got divorced, and I did start working at that time. And my upbringing was always that nobody was going to solve these problems for me, and I had to go through the motions, and that I was going to fail way more than I succeeded. And we never thought that money was going to be the ultimate goal of success. So my mother always taught me that, responsibility is something that must be taken, it can't be given. And she always told me that I'd be successful if I took responsibility for every single action. And her version of success was never money, because we never had money. We never thought we'd have money. And we know a lot of very wealthy people that people call successful, but they're miserable because they have money, like Kevin O'Leary, right?
It's because he doesn't have enough money, David.
So that is a crucial part of my upbringing, that I had to be accountable and take responsibility. Failure is part of the process. And that if I was searching for money, I know I probably wouldn't make it, or I'd spend it as soon as I get it, or I end up in the wrong place for it.
That's great. I love it. Good lessons. Your mom is a smart woman.
Yes.
Yes.
His mom is great.
Oh, you met her?
Yeah, many times.
Oh, that's great. We'll talk about your mom later. No, I'm just kidding. We won't have to do that. I don't know. So, Robert, what I loved, switching over to your book for a minute, because you talk in there about how you think that some people are born with their purpose. And so I think for a lot of people, where I thought that was going is you would say, and my purpose was just evident to me, and here I am, and this is what I always wanted to do. But you share that wasn't you, and that your purpose wasn't really evident to you. And, for example, your degrees in English literature, which some people may not segue to doing cybersecurity and doing everything that you do today in Shark Tank. So it's very interesting. So for people that maybe aren't as sure about where they're going with their career or what their path is, how did you go about defining your purpose? How did you arrive at that?
Yeah, Jennifer, Mark Cuban and I had this conversation on the set one time, and Mark Cuban says that when he was 12 years old, he knew he wanted to be an entrepreneur, and he had this vision and all that stuff. And I always walk away from that conversation, I think, wow, when I was 12 years old, I had no idea. When I was 20 years old, I had no idea. I just knew I didn't want to be poor, right? And it's kind of like Daymond said, we weren't very well off. I just didn't want to live like we were living. So it wasn't I wanted to buy a plane or a Ferrari or a big house. I just didn't want to be poor. And I didn't want to be poor from a financial perspective. I just didn't want people to pick on us, right? Because we're immigrants, we didn't speak the language. I just said, I don't want to live like this. And then when I was in my early 20s, I got fired from a job. I used to tell my mom, as long as I make $1,000 for my age, I'm good to go. So when I turn 50, if I'm making 50 grand a year, woo, right?
How did that work out?
It worked out pretty good, actually. And so a guy fired me, and I had to make a mortgage payment, so I started a company. I'll never forget, I went home, and I told my mom, I said, I'm starting a company. I'm going to do it. I think I've got the courage to do it. And she looked at me, she went, oh, don't worry, you get job one day. So it was just a temporary thing. But I think purpose comes from two ways. Either you really are incredibly driven, you know it, or it comes from pain. And I always think when the pain of your current situation becomes unbearable, you'll change.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
I agree.
This is well, you know, like I am a huge social media fan, and all I want to do right now is tweet all of these comments because there's so many good nuggets that you guys are giving, and it's really, I feel like I'm missing something here that I can't tweet and ask questions at the same time. But so when you think back to when you were building your businesses and going back to early days, figuring out what you wanted to do, you know, a lot of people in this room struggle with the fact that there's some things that they want to own and that they want to be responsible for, and there's some things they're willing to let go of. And they're trying to figure out, what do I let go of and outsource or get employees to do, and what should I keep for myself? And there's all these different degrees of that. What were some things that you said, no, this I have to own? And maybe we'll start with you, Daymond.
Yeah, you know, I felt that I needed to own the understanding of the market, marketing. And because I think that's a black hole when opening a business, especially now. Do you go online? Do you go print? Do you go, you know, how do you contact customers, CRM, things of that nature? And I never wanted to give those keys over to somebody else because then they could either hold me hostage to the business, or the biggest marketing or the number one person they were going to market was me, to tell me that they're doing a great job. And I realized that I always had to do that. And my theory was always that I needed to be the most is 2 steps away from the money. I didn't need to depend on a retailer who then depends on somebody to market, to then depend on hopefully somebody who buys it. I needed to always be, if I could, make it and sell it directly to the person, I needed to do that. But if I had to deal with a retailer, I had to do it. But I had to be able to market to the customer to push them through the retailer to come back to me. And so I always needed to do marketing first.
That's great advice.
Really simple. I felt like I needed to own everything.
I think a lot of people can probably relate to that.
Yeah, because, you know, when I started out, I thought, there's nobody as good as I am at doing the things that need to be done. So it was really easy. When I started my business, I had to do everything. And everybody I hired was just there to supplement my brilliance. And then somewhere along the way, I stayed small, and I wasn't getting any bigger. And I thought, why am I not getting any bigger? Why are all the people who aren't as smart as me or work as hard as me running bigger companies? What's the key? And it just hit me one day. It's leverage. And if you're going to do everything, you're always going to stay small. Because the only way to grow a business is with a great team. And a great team is made up of people not that you necessarily like, but that complement your skills, that respect each other. Because in my business, we're a full contact sport. For us to win a deal, someone's got to lose that deal. And I can't compete on a world-class scale by being okay. I can't be okay at my accounting system. I can't be okay at sales. I can't be okay at engineering. You've got to be great at one thing, because the world does not reward mediocrity. So if your business is okay and you're kind of good at what you do, eventually you're standing in the middle of the road and there's a bus going to come along and it's going to drive right over you.
Wow, that's great. So, I mean, not great if a bus drives over you. Keep that in mind, though, if you don't get a good team. So I think it's interesting. You talked about, you know, having the right people and looking for those right people that can complement you. When you're looking for those people in your business to work with you, that are the closest people that are going to support you and take it to the next level, what do you look for? Like, what are the attributes that you're like, these are mission critical attributes? Maybe we'll start with you and then go back to you, Daymond.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's two things. It's not just the people, but it's also services. I mean, today there's a lot of great partners like Sage, and but, you know, knowing what you don't know is the key to finding the right people, because then you can find great partnerships. I tend to look for people that complement my strengths, but I always look for culture first. Our business, what's the saying? I think it's Andy Grove said, culture always trumps strategy. And in our culture, we're highly competitive. We like to win. We like to compete, and we work really hard. So it's hard to hire somebody who's kind of a 9-to-5, let's just get along kind of person. So those are things that we typically look for.
I have to say the exact same thing. We hire people that are about culture. We don't give them necessarily, they have a time to check in, but they don't have a time to check out.
I love that.
Yeah, we reward them according to performance, but we have people that are having a really great time. Often we will put somebody in a position that they traditionally haven't been in. Of course, not in accounting, but but other areas of business, and they will add the fundamentals. They will apply the fundamentals of what they understand about business to that, and because it's new and exciting, they'll come up with brand new ideas. So we really are about culture as well.
Great. Yeah, culture is so important. So, Robert, I want to refer to your book for a minute. So, you don't have to be a shark, but it helps. No, I'm just kidding. It's just, you don't have to be a shark.
It does help.
It does help a little bit. So, this book is based largely on your belief that sales skills are fundamental to the success of every business. And it's interesting. I've talked to a number of entrepreneurs and business owners here, and we'll talk to them about the size of different teams and what about your sales team? And they're like, we don't really feel like we need a sales team. I'm like, well, you like a great salesperson? Like, no, I don't really have sales skills, but the business comes. So it's interesting because sometimes you.
Oh, I just had a cold sweat when you said that.
It's interesting because do I really need sales skills? I'm like, I feel like somebody in your business should have them, which you totally agree with, I guess. So first of all, you feel like sales skills are fundamental. What do you do if you don't have them? Can people build sales skills? Can you get them? And how could you help some of the people here that are non-sales people think about how to start selling?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing. Anybody can learn sales. Anybody. You don't have to be born as a salesperson. I wasn't like this when I was in my 20s. When I was in my 20s, I was afraid of my own shadow. I couldn't have got up in front of a group of people like this or talked to anybody. So I think those skills come directly as a result of your desire. If you want it hard enough, you'll learn the skill set. If you don't, you'll make an excuse. And sales is fundamental. If you own a business, you're in sales. I mean, that's it. If you are an owner or a CEO or a founder, you are in the business of sales. And sales is everything. You can't hire great people without selling them on your company. You can't get customers to come on board. It's all about sales. And I think anybody can learn it. Just buy my book. No, I'm just
available on Amazon right now.
Or Daymond's book.
And actually, while you're buying that, you can just add Daymond's book, The Power of Broke, and we'll talk about that right now.
Shout out to The Power of Broke.
Was that your mom?
It was.
That's awesome. Cheering you on from the front row. That's a great idea. So in your latest book, The Power of Broke, available on Amazon, again, you share inspirational stories about everyday people, and I love that concept because I think everybody is an everyday person. We're all everyday people.
Right.
And so if you can sum up the lessons from that book and what it means to be an everyday person and how you can become your greatest self, could you sum that up for us?
The bottom line of The Power of Broke is you don't need money to make money. I always say that. If you look at the top wealthiest 1,000 individuals in the world, over 60% of them are self-made men and women. That means they were all broke at a certain time. And if you could pass down generational wealth, then everybody would have stayed on the list. And every single person in this room and every single person up here on the stage started off selling. Now, Robert talks about sales. You need sales when you have a company, but you're selling all day, every day. You're selling when you're trying to get into the bathroom before your husband or wife, when you're telling your child, shut up and just get on the bus. I'll take you to Chuck E. Cheese on the weekend. Then you get into the office and you're selling. We're selling all the time. So all the people out there that think they aren't natural salespeople, they are natural salespeople. But it's only something that's very important about sales. Robert will elaborate because he has a great saying that he says, but you have to sell on what is in it for the person you're selling to. Too often you're confused, and we're confused about what do we want to get out of it. But if you don't care about the person and the objective that that person has, then they couldn't care less about what you're trying to sell. And that's the important thing about the power of broke. We always say that OPM is other people's money, but OPM is other people's manufacturing, mind power, manpower, marketing, and mentors. It doesn't have to be just money. And you're selling to acquire any and all those things to use it as one of your pieces of artillery.
So true. You know, when I started out, I wanted to start a business, and somebody said to me, you can't start a business because in order to make money, what do you need?
Money.
And I had no money. And then the other thing people told me is, well, you know, business isn't about what you know, it's
who you know.
You know, my dad worked in a factory, my mom was a receptionist, I was pretty out of luck.
Yeah.
And so you just got to become the person that others want to get to know one day.
Yeah, I mean, to elaborate that, we both started off humble. I'm not sure, I don't know your experience, but, you know, I'm African-American, I'm short, I'm dyslexic, I got left back, just me and my mother, never went to college. I didn't know anybody famous. I didn't have anybody famous in my family. I mean, I did call Elton John and tell him I'm his son, but he didn't believe me for various reasons, and I'm not sure why.
I don't know why. Maybe because you're short.
I'm short. But yeah, sales is most important. And you know, Shark Tank is something real, and I'll give you an example. We really invest in those people, but somebody sold me this crap on Shark Tank. It was this little Hanukkah, this little tree thing. It's called Hanukkah tree top. You can sell it one time of the year. It's a mixed faith family. This crap. But I realized the guy was such a great salesperson that I hired him as my head of sales. He's right over here. Anybody want to see the guy who came in with Shark Tank? Maury, wave your hand right there. So I say all that to say Shark Tank is real, but we invest in people, and sales is the number one reason I bring people aboard with culture.
I love this. You guys are full of awesome insights. And when we're talking about everyday people, how I know you're an everyday person is because you have to go to Chuck E. Cheese too.
Yes.
That's just...
I go by myself.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Can't you tell?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't go to Chuck E. Cheese.
I thought there was some level of money that would allow you to stop going to Chuck E. Cheese, but I guess not. No, it doesn't work that way. So I want to get into the Shark Tank because obviously people love the show and they have lots of questions. So when you think about how you got your startup funding, you talked, Robert, about not having any money at the beginning. How are you going to start a business? And you're starting from nothing. Where did your investment come from? I mean, how did you get started?
Credit cards.
We don't endorse this necessarily. I just want to let you know where he's giving you his experience.
Yeah, credit cards, more credit cards, and asking. So when I started my business, we had to pay the mortgage. I went out and I sold something. My very first sale in my own company was to General Electric, big company. So I sold in this really complicated computer thing called the Vitalink Bridge. Anyway, it was $40,000. So I go in, you could buy the product from me, or you could buy from Sun Microsystem, this big, huge company. So I go into a room, there's a bunch of tech people, and they're like, all right, we'll give you a chance. We'll give you the order. I'm like, woo! So I get in my car, I'm like, yeah! So I call the supplier that makes the technology, and I said, I got you an order for, I think my margin was $5,000, so $35,000. I got an order for $35,000. They're like, great, send us the money. I'm like, what do you mean? I got the order. And they're like, we're not going to give you credit. You're working out of your house. You're a single guy employee. Forget it. So I'm like, well, where do I get the money? They're like, we don't care. Click. So I pull over on the side of the road, and I'm like, what am I going to do? My credit card limit was $2,500. I had no money. There's no way I'm calling my parents. So here's what I did. I turned the car around. I go back to General Electric. I call the guys I just met with. I bring them all in the room, and I say, thank you very much for the order. But I need a favor. I need you to prepay for the order. They're like, you know this is General Electric. We're good for $40,000. And I say, but if you give me this chance and you help me out, I'll take care of you better than anybody's ever taken care of you. I just need you to really help me out.
That's incredible.
And they look at me and they go, okay. I couldn't believe it.
Great story.
Yeah. So.
That's awesome.
I think Great entrepreneurs always find a way. Money is actually not the stumbling block to success. Creativity, lack of will, lack of effort, and lack of sales, as Daymond said, that's the stumbling block. So when we invest on Shark Tank, I actually don't want to invest in a business that needs money. Because any business that needs money to survive is in trouble. I want to invest in a business where the money is going to accelerate growth, not keep them in business.
Agreed.
I love that. That's great lessons. I just love it. Daymond, what about you?
Very similar stories. You know, I made a couple of T-shirts and I sold them, and I ended up closing FUBU 3 times from 1989 to 1992 because I ran out of capital. But one of the things, but I only ran out of $1,000, $2,000, and that's what real entrepreneurs do. They take affordable steps. They take steps that they can come back from. Now, you hear about the story that I took out a $100,000 loan on my mother's house. That was 6 years in. I already had $300,000 in orders, and I got turned down by 27 banks. And then I went over to my mother and said, I got turned down by 27 banks because I didn't have financial intelligence. I didn't know how to do that. And my mother, like any of us, sales cures all, said, you have 300,000 in orders? Okay, well, take out this loan. And that's all we had. I don't know how she got a $100,000 loan on the house because the house was only worth $75,000. Till today, I still didn't ask what she did for the rest of the money. Now, and I don't want to know. Don't tell me, Mom. But she would have never gave that to me. We didn't have $300,000 because she figured $300,000 in orders. We figured we would sell that and put the money back into the home. But that is the number one thing that entrepreneurs, we all have in common, successful ones. We take affordable steps.
Affordable steps. That's awesome. And I was thinking about, I think there's so many great insights. I just want to be tweeting about it. It's really difficult. I know that there's at least a few people in the room that when you talked about getting money from your first customer, someone's like, I could ask my customer for money. That's not necessarily what you should do, just to let you know. But it worked well for you. I think what's interesting is you've had a number of probably sink or swim moments. It sounds like you've had a few, Daymond, where you kind of started up and then kind of stepped back. What do you think is the difference between sink or swim, failure, and success? And Robert,
wow,
we'll start with you.
It's a great question.
It's like a meaning of life question, right? Really deep.
I think life is a timeline, and we don't determine the stuff that happens to us on that timeline, but we determine the direction. We determine in our lives whether that timeline is going to take us forward and upwards, or we determine whether it's going to be negative and miserable and lacking love and all the other stuff. Because at the end of the day, life is going to throw some really bad crap at you. And you can't always control what happens to you, but you can always control how you react to it. And I think there's those moments when you look back and you think, wow, why did I do that? Why did I do this? But I just think when you're in the moment, you have to survive. And as a business owner, I always think my business is a living, breathing thing. It is like a baby. If it needs to eat, it needs to eat. If I want to go out for dinner and hang out with my friends and the business needs me to do something, too bad. If my relationship is in trouble because the business needs me to work more, too bad. The business is a living, breathing thing, and I think you have to have that level of commitment, and you'll just find a way.
That's great.
Great. I think that transparency and being very honest with the purpose for what you're doing it is very, very important. I think that we see that in the nonprofits where people will commit their life to something. They won't make much money out of it, but they would have done it forever. I would have dressed people for the rest of my life for free if I could have. Right? I think when Robert and I talk about his business, his eyes light up when he talks about securities and the things that he does. And if you're willing and you know your loss, you know what you're willing to gamble, whatever it is. So, you start gambling, you go play blackjack, you start at the $5 table, not the $1,000 table. And you slowly work your way up. And in business, it's the same thing. Business will change, you will change. Today, my business, I was talking to Robert, at the peak of my business, I had internationally maybe about 600 people, nothing near what you guys have. I went crazy because I'm a people's person, and I love to sit and talk to people every day. After 150 employees, you stop knowing names and things of that nature. I'm not built for that, and that's why my business has changed around to licensing and connecting people. But 20 years ago, I was happy with those amount of people. And you have to really be honest with yourself. I think Barbara does not say a lot of bright things. Trust me on this one. Barbara,
we love her,
but she doesn't take her meds, and she does not say a lot of bright things often. But when she says something, it's brilliant.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. Now, she said to me one day, Daymond, what I did in my business, talking about herself, she said, I wrote down a list of what I love to do and what I hate to do. And I crossed out all the things I wanted to hate, and I outsourced them, or I gave them up totally. And she said, I've been happy ever since. And that was 30 years ago. And actually, I started to do that as well. And that changed my entire business 5 years ago.
I just think, you gotta, I completely agree. You gotta find, and sometimes when you start out, you don't have to have choice.
Yeah.
You have to do the things you don't want to do in order to have the privilege to do the ones you want. But I just think, this is such an incredible opportunity. Everybody in this room has such an amazing opportunity. This is still the best country in the world to start a business and create wealth. 100%. Absolutely. And I just think you got to have a purpose. Like, why do you wake up every day? For me, when I started out, I had no money. And then along the way, you make a little bit of money. And then I think, you know what? My dad escaped from a communist jail to bring us to this country. If I don't make something of myself, that sacrifice wasn't worth it. I just don't think that the average person wakes up in the morning and says, I want my life to suck. Right? I don't think anybody in this room woke up this morning and said, I'm going to allow life to beat me down, and I want pain in my life. Nobody wants that. And that's what starting a business is. It can give you that freedom and that opportunity to make something of yourself, for your family, for the people you love, for your dog. I don't care what the reason is, as long as you have purpose.
That's great. I love it. Very inspired. I love it. So, thinking about your pitches, you talked about the little tree, which actually, I think I've seen that little tree a little earlier.
The top of the tree, yeah. The
top of the
Hanukkah
tree.
What was it called?
Hanukkah tree top.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
So, if you could think about your most memorable pitch, thinking about the Shark Tank, the one that just stands out, whether you went for it or not, what was the most memorable pitch that you had?
There's so many to me, but the one I remember is seeing a guy, he almost did an infomercial live, uncut in front of us. Now, just so you know, those pitches can last up to 2.5 hours. You only see 8 minutes of it. An average pitch, what do you say, is 45 minutes?
Over an hour.
Yeah. So you only see that. But he did it live, and it was this really stupid product called the Scrub Daddy.
But very memorable.
Very memorable.
Oh, no.
I'll tell you why it's memorable. Because it was really stupid. It was a little sponge. It looks like a face. How many people have the Scrub Daddy here? Raise your hand. Shout out to the Scrub Daddy. Now, it looks like a sun, and when the water's cold, it gets hard. When the warm, it gets soft. And I upbid it because I just, Lori beat me in a deal prior to that, and I probably made her pay another $200,000 for this thing. She goes off and makes $80 million off of this stupid sponge. So it was the most memorable thing because it was fun to watch. I thought I outslicked her. She goes and makes $80 million off of it, and now I'm really upset. So that's the one I remember.
That also answers the question, are there any that you didn't bite on that you wish you did? I think you got that covered. What about you, Robert? Your most memorable pitch?
Season 1, you'll remember this, the pee-pee pool.
Yes.
So this guy comes out, and the premise is you're golfing with a mixed group, men and women, and, you have to go pee. And you don't want to do it in the woods, and there's a female in the presence, so he made a
male.
Or he made a golf club, and what you do is you go in the woods, you unscrew the top of the golf club.
No, you don't go in the woods. You stand there because you said you had a towel.
That's right. There's a little towel, you unscrew the top of the golf club, and I'm not making this up. You relieve yourself into the golf club.
There's a big tube.
Yeah, and you put the tube that looks like a golf club back in your bag. He got an investment. He got an investment from Kevin Harrington. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And Kevin's an idiot. Anyway, Kevin ends up selling 15,000 of them as a gag gift.
Yeah.
So I always remember that, because just because it seems silly or stupid to me, you never know.
I think one thing that we can learn out of this is, all due respect, I wouldn't have done that good. I wouldn't have done as well with that, with the sponge. And also, Robert has something called ugly sweater. What is it?
Ugly Christmas sweater.
Ugly Christmas sweater. I'm too close to the fashion industry. I wouldn't have done as well as there. And what we can learn out of that, or the PB Fold, is that it's the perfect shark meeting the perfect person with the perfect expertise. So I say that for everybody to walk away going, don't chase a whole bunch of other things because you think it can work. If you don't know it, I've invested in some things that I think I can do great with, and I did horrible. It just wasn't something that I had a skill set at.
But I always think, if I knew what I know now about business, I'm not sure I would have ever started.
I would not have.
Right?
And if somebody gave me the blueprint to what I was going to do and showed me exactly what I went through, I would say, no way I'm going to stay at Red Lobster as a waiter. That's it. No way.
Yeah.
It is amazing when you look back on your journey, how much you've been through, isn't it? And I'm sure a lot of the people here can relate. So, a number of people here that I've talked about, they're looking for investors. They're thinking about how do they scale up their business and get it to the next level. What do you think is the most critical piece of advice for someone that's seeking investment in their business? Is it about the pitch? Is it about, what should they be paying the closest attention to? What do you look for?
I always think you've got to have a way that the money is going to accelerate the business. Nobody wants to invest in you because you're going to take the cash and just drift along. Investors want to know how they're going to get their money back and how the money is going to accelerate your growth. So it's always about scale. If I give you $1, show me how your business is going to grow by using that dollar. Because if you're growing organically, then why do you need an investment? If you can grow by 20% per year organically, and I give you $100,000 and you're going to grow by 21%, why would I do that? How do I get my money back? So it's always about leverage and that pivot point.
Absolutely agree. Also, what is in it for the investor? Does the investor want a return on their money? How much? Or don't assume the investor just wants money. Maybe the investor is a strategic partner. But, the thing about it is everybody always says they need an investment. But the earlier you take in money, the more it costs. So don't look at yourself in only a year. Don't say, I'm going to start a business and I want $100,000 from Robert, and Robert, I'll give you 25% of the business. All right, well, when you get to $1 million and you need to now raise $500,000, Robert's not giving up his 25%. What are you going to do? Do it again and do it again. Before you know it, you're working for everybody else, and the whole reason you started the business is now defunct. Because now you're working for everybody else. We see people who come on Shark Tank, they've given away, this one girl that just came on Shark Tank gave away 75% of her company in 3 different raises, and she only raised $40,000. She's doing $2.5 million now, a year and a half later. She's miserable. So I always say, don't take in money too soon and understand what's in it for the investor.
Hey, if you own a business, who's the last person that gets paid? Right? When you start a business, everybody gets paid before you. The vendors, the suppliers, everybody. So if you're going to take that risk and live that pain, why would you give up the equity?
Forget even you, the one who gets paid last. For 2 years when FUBU went down, I had to go home and bring back money. And you don't want to let those good people go, right? They all have places to go. And the bad people that you want to fire, they never leave, right? You know what I'm talking about.
I know.
Yeah.
Everybody
knows what I'm talking about.
Jennifer's shaking her head.
I love it. I could sit here all day and continue this conversation, honestly, but as we're, they would like me to.
Thank you.
I think I can see Van in the first row saying I'm not allowed, I think, but it's a great conversation. You guys have so much great advice. As we said to wrap up today, we think about, we've been asking kind of all of our panelists and keynote speakers the same thing, which is what is that golden nugget, that one piece of advice if you could give everyone a key takeaway as they're going out and thinking about how do they grow their business, how do they take it to the next level, what would that one piece of advice be?
Going back to my OPM theory, what do you have that you can tap into that you're taking for granted? So do you have relationship capital? Are you at that stage in your life where you're maybe a boss and you're not calling on those people that you came up with 20 years ago and you're still doing business with them, but your staff is talking to their staff? How are you, going past this line of social media and this cold world we're at and tapping into your relationship capital? Are you tapping into your old distributors? Are you going back and looking at your numbers again and knowing that you can save 5 points on this, 5 points on that? A lot of times we get to this point in our life where we think that, we've gotten here and now we can afford everything else. You can never afford to lose any of your assets. And that's the most important thing. It's the small things that end up eating a business. And I think that's what we always have to do every quarter and every year.
Great advice.
Thank you.
Be great. Right? You've got one life. You've got one chance. Make the most of it. Don't be a spectator in life. Somebody out there built a great business in your field. They didn't do it by wishing. They didn't do it by dreaming. They did it by executing. Dreams are cheap. Desire is cheap. Execution is hard. Hoorah. Do it.
Thank you both so much for coming. I got so... Do you have more than one mother? That's your other mother.
That's his cousin.
Thank you so much both for being here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to our guests, Robert Herjavec and Daymond John.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Real pleasure. Thank you so much. Okay, so my phone is leaving here. Hey, you're going to get it.
All right, now I'm going to Snapchat.
Snapchat.
Say hi, Rob.
Thank
Say
you.
hi, Rob. All right.
Great. Thank you, guys. Wow. Did you guys love that?
Yeah.
I loved that. They were awesome.